colors and units in CSS. So here's where we last level. It's the same document we have. It's a single file called website.html, and let me run it. I'm using Visual Studio Code on live server. So let's start with colors. We're just gonna use an inline CSS this time, because it just makes it easier to explain this. So let's say the H1 has a color, right? So if all elements, H, B, the body, they have a color property. So the color is the color of the text. So for example, if I say this is blue, now H1 will be blue. If I can add comma, I can say comma B, and now they will both be blue. I can say the body, and now they're all blue because I click on the body. And this is where the cascading comes from. So if you would say these are a child elements and this is the parent element, the properties of the parent cascade down to the child's, unless the child explicitly changes. So for example, now since the parent has that color, both the child and B has, but H1 can't have its own color. So if it specifies its own color, then it can change the color. It's yellow. It's super hard to see. Yeah, but so we have the color property, and then we also have the background color property. And you can set the color in many different ways. You can set it by name, as you can see here. You can set it by, if you go to color wheel. So it's this tool that basically helps you choose whatever color you want to choose, and then you get this value. Then you kind of pass the value. You basically put the value there. You can select it that way. Wow, it's so hard to see. This is messing with my head, so I'm just gonna change this to black for now. And then so you get the idea. There are multiple ways you can do this. Let's get into units. Units are a little bit harder to explain. So there are two and units. We use units, for example, when we want to give the font size. So let's say I want to give H1 a font size, right? So if I say font size of something, now I have to give a unit. There are two kind of units. One are called they're called absolute and absolute units. So they're absolute, they don't change, and we have relative units. Let me just comment this out. So we have absolute units and relative units. Absolute means it doesn't matter how big or small your screen is, it will never change. So something like if I say 20 pixels, now that will always be 20 pixels. No matter what happens, no matter how small my screen is, no matter how big my screen is. So it's not recommended that you use this because it doesn't consider the different size of the screens. Another one is millimeter. You can use millimeters, right? There's like 20 millimeters. There's another one called centimeter. You get the idea. They are called inches, right? You get the idea. So they're all absolute, and it's not recommended. Now there are relative units you can use. One of them is called M, and M is pretty interesting actually. So let's say 5M. M is interesting because it takes the value of the parent, so the value of the body. In this case, the body is the parent. So let's just say body has a relative value of font size of body is, say it's 20 pixels. Now H is going to be 5 times 20, right? So if I say 2, for example, now H is 2 times 20, so H is 40. That's why it's bigger than the rest. It's 40. So it's basically 2 times the parent or whatever. Now if I do something like merging, which is we're gonna learn, so if I do merging, so if I say like 20M, now this is going to be interesting because you can barely see it. So let's just do the 3. Now the merging, so we said this is the actual font size here. It's going to be see the actual font size here is going to be 2 times, we comment this out, don't want to comment that out, so let's just do this. Okay, so the comments Okay, so that we said it's 2 times 20, which is equal to 40, right? So now here we have 40 pixels. Right now we have 40 pixels. In here, the interesting part is we actually won't have 40 pixels. We will have 3 times the element, so the font size of the element. So we will have 3 times 40, which gives us 120. Right, so when it's just the first time you're setting, it uses the parent. The second time you're setting for something like a merchant or padding, which we'll cover later, it uses the one that it receives. It's a little bit confusing, but that's the idea behind it. So that's M. And then we have rem. We just put R in front of it. And rem is, as you see, way smaller because rem uses what's called the root size. So in this case, it's the HTML. So it is actually, the root is the HTML size. And if you don't set the HTML, it just uses 16. So if I say HTML, and now I give this HTML a font size of, say, 5 pixels. Now you see it's way smaller because it doesn't care about the parent. Now this is 2 times 5, so that would be 10 pixels. But the next one is also 3 times 5. So before we were using the 10, but when you're using the rem, root m, kind of think of like that, then it basically doesn't use anymore. It just uses what it has. So this is 15. So that's why it's way smaller. And you will see most of the people kind of using either M or rem, and the more you use it, the more you get used to it. There are 2 more. So let's see. There's 2 more relative. One is called 100, the percentage. So let me actually give a background color called green. So now our page is green. Now I can give the width of the page. I can make it 50%. If I save that, now the width actually became a 50%. As you can see, the text, it became a 50% of the whole window. So right now it's actually just there. It's kind of hard to see. We can use it for H1 to specify more. So if I say H1, you can see the H is 50%. I can say 70. Now it's 70%. I can make it 20%. You can see how you can control that. So you can use percentage, and then you can use also VW, which says view width. So view width and percentage would be the same. It's basically the width of the view that I see right now. So if I say like 50, then it would go to the middle. You kind of think of you can think of like that. But really nice is there is view height too. So view height. So this would be the height. So now it took half of the height that you can see. So no matter what screen size you have, you can always determine the height. And if I say 100, save it, then it takes all the visible height, and then you have to scroll down to see the rest. Yeah, and we'll be using these units all for the place, so you will get used more the more code you see and the more code you write. So that looks nice. I'll see you in the next